Tonight, another 2 weeks and a curfew. Melbourne's lockdown tightens amid anger over non-compliance.
It's selfish. They are shitty choices, and they will keep us all locked down for longer than we should be.
Also tonight, chaos in Kabul. Taliban forces capture the Afghan capital as thousands flee. National security chiefs scramble to evacuate Australians in Afghanistan and those who've worked beside them. And valet Ernie Sigley, the beloved showbiz icon from Melbourne, dies aged 82. Good evening. Tamara O'Dine with ABC News. In a matter of hours, Melbourne will be back under curfew amid tighter restrictions and an extended lockdown. The Premier says he has no choice but to toughen the COVID response to get Melbourne back in front of this latest outbreak. He's blasted those who've ignored restrictions, accusing them of putting at risk the progress that's been made in dealing with Delta this time around. In the past 24 hours, we've recorded 22 new locally acquired cases. 8 of those have been in the community while infectious, and 5 have no known links. State political reporter Bridget Rollison has today's developments.
This is an illegal engagement party with around 70 guests held in the middle of lockdown as the host jokes about breaking COVID restrictions.
Clearly this is legal because this is a group therapy session.
An infected person attended the St Kilda East celebration, and there are now fears the party could become a super spreading event.
It's selfish. They are shitty choices, and they will keep us all locked down for longer than we should be.
It's gatherings like these that have prompted the state government to impose a strict curfew and extend the lockdown for another 2 weeks.
We are right on the cliff edge here, but that if we can pull back from it, we can absolutely get to the finish line that we know we want to get to.
Playgrounds will also close, large construction projects will be reduced to 25% capacity, and all workers will need a permit.
Extending the lockdown was always on the cards, but reimposing the curfew, closing down playgrounds, my goodness, that's just cruel.
Masks will no longer be allowed to be removed to drink alcohol in public after organised pub crawls at the weekend saw people gather in large groups.
Take away, not hang around and turn the footpath into a pub.
There are 8 clusters that have health authorities worried in Newport, West Footscray, Middle Park, Wyndham Vale, the City of Melbourne, Glenroy, Lygon Street in Carlton and St Kilda East, where the source of the virus remains a mystery.
When we have all these mystery cases that are still coming through, it implies that there are other cases of transmission out there that we've not yet detected. We will only find them if people come forward to get tested.
3 people who were at the illegal engagement party have now tested positive, and pop-up testing has been set up in the St Kilda East area. Police say every adult at the party will be fined.
That's going to be over $350,000 worth of fines. That's an expensive engagement party.
The community is compliant, the community is doing the right thing, the community is angry and frustrated that this small group of people did do the wrong thing.
The list of exposure sites has now passed 530, and it includes a public housing tower in Carlton's Lygon Street where 2 mystery cases have been found, and the Pascoe Vale Road Market in Glenroy. Victorians are clearly fatigued by these repeated lockdowns, but the government believes if it doesn't act now with these tough measures, our daily case numbers could reach 100 within a fortnight. The big challenge now is to get all Melburnians to comply. Bridget Rollison, ABC News, Melbourne.
For more on the latest measures and those efforts to improve compliance, Eden Hennanen joins me. So Eden, the Premier says this next phase of restrictions is needed to get people to take this seriously. How will authorities enforce these new tighter rules?
Good evening, Tam. Yes, it wasn't just the Premier that showed anger today at the press conference. The Chief Commissioner of Police, Shane Patton, basically described the actions of those in Melbourne over the past week as selfish and outrageous, and basically said the time for half measures is over. That's why the police said that they will be relaunching Operation Shielding. this weekend. That will be a huge blitz out in the city where police will be monitoring parks and restaurants and basically putting harsh penalties on anyone that's breaking the rules. Now, just a reminder of those rules that come into effect tonight. A curfew will come in from 9 p.m. until 5 a.m. An exercise with just one other person or dependent is allowed, but with your whole household is not allowed. Now, authorised workers must also carry a permit when they're leaving their home. Now, have a listen to what Chief Commissioner had to say a short time ago.
I said to the Premier this morning, I've been reassessing where we're at. We've been trying to apply discretion. We've been trying to be fair, and we have been fair with a mixture of enforcement, infringements and warnings. If anyone gets a warning moving forward from here on in, they're going to be very lucky. The time for discretion is over.
But the Police Association basically say that the members are stretched to the limit and that a curfew is not necessary.
Every time we make a decision to do something extra, it means there's something extra for our members to do, and there are fewer and fewer of them around to do it. It's going to be difficult for us to do that, but we'll do our best.
But police said that with more than 900 reports of mass gatherings in Melbourne over the weekend, they think this tough curfew and lockdown will put an end to that.
Eden Hennanen, thank you. Well, Afghans are facing a new reality with their country back under Taliban control after 20 years of war. Armed militants have taken the capital, Kabul, completing their swift advance across the nation as the United States prepared to withdraw the last of its troops. The Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has fled the country, leaving the United States, Australia and other allies racing to evacuate their nationals and the thousands of Afghans who helped them fight the Taliban. There are reports that at least 5 people have been killed in the chaos at Kabul's international airport as people tried to force their way onto planes leaving the capital. Australia will be sending troops to evacuate more than 130 Australians who've been working in Afghanistan. Our coverage tonight will include analysis from Washington DC and Canberra, but we begin with South Asia correspondent James Oaten.
Panic and despair, many without hope. With Kabul airport the only way out of Afghanistan after a Taliban takeover, thousands tried in vain to board a flight to safety. That gunfire isn't from Taliban fighters. Witnesses claimed US troops fired into the air as they tried to disperse the crowds while trying to evacuate their own. The Taliban captured the capital without any resistance from the Afghan army. Militants took hold of the country's presidential palace, and the group claimed the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan was back. The war was over. President Ashraf Ghani had fled the country. It all happened in a matter of hours. Even the Taliban leadership was surprised.
The way we have come through was unexpected, as we have reached the position which was never expected.
The Taliban has vowed to build peaceful relations with other nations. But those inside the country, especially women, fear a return to a regime that imposed brutal punishments.
The Taliban came into our village in the night. After a few days, we managed to escape as they were murdering the men and boys. They accused them of being in the army or the police.
The Taliban says it'll reveal what the new regime will look like. Under the old regime, women couldn't complete their education, pursue a career, or even leave the house without a man.
I might face consequences that I never even dreamed of. And I guess that's the price that we pay for trying to make this world a little better.
The price of a 20-year war borne not only by Afghanistan, but by thousands of foreign troops who sacrificed their lives for a better future. James Oaten, ABC News.
There are growing concerns for the safety of Australians in Afghanistan. The government has approved a military evacuation mission, but given the deteriorating security situation in the capital, it's not clear when Australian troops will be able to land in Kabul. Here's political editor Andrew Probyn.
Mission into mayhem. Coalition forces dispatched for one last push. Australia sending more than 250 troops, a refueler jet and 2 large transport aircraft.
Around the other side.
for a treacherous end to Australia's long involvement in Afghanistan, one that's been both a military slog and a political marathon. Through 7 prime ministerships, a bipartisan commitment to an international mission that's morphed over the years. From kill and capture of Osama bin Laden and defeat of al-Qaeda to nurturing a fragile Afghan government, a 2-decade intervention disintegrating into chaos and ruin.
That is the story of Afghanistan. It is a tragic place.
Australia's final task, a dangerous extraction to rescue civilian Australians and Afghans who served with the ADF.
To leave in a safe and orderly way. The challenge, of course, is making sure that that is the circumstance that applies in Kabul.
The scenes in Kabul underscoring how difficult that'll be.
We've had from April till now to think about what we were going to do, and here we are now at the 11th hour, caught short.
The future of all Afghans uncertain, but especially women and girls.
It's very hard. It's breaking my heart to see my country like this.
Zainab Kazemi's family fled Afghanistan a decade ago. Her father, one of thousands to arrive in Australia by boat. Relatives left behind in fear of Taliban retribution.
They're going to kill all those women who have worked for the government, all those women who have spoken up.
We should be opening our hearts and opening our country to them.
The humanitarian disaster erupting in Afghanistan brings its own moral questions and challenges. Australia and other nations involved in the 20-year conflict will carry a particular responsibility. As for those we've already promised safe haven, the distressing scenes at Kabul airport suggest keeping that vow will be difficult.
Leaving behind a lot of people who helped us, and I think just God help them. God help them.
Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
Pressure is mounting for US President Joe Biden to explain how security in Afghanistan unravelled so quickly. ABC correspondent Greg Jennett reports from Washington.
Rotors overhead, rapid-fire rounds from the sides. The American military beat a retreat from the doomed embassy to a now familiar soundtrack. The Taliban hadn't been this close in this number since supporters trashed and burnt the old embassy as the US bombed its government into submission. Now the outlaws are back in Kabul, in command of forces America spent billions of dollars standing up, only to be sorely let down when it mattered.
The inability of Afghan security forces to defend their country has played a very powerful role in what we've seen.
The Biden administration's smarting over a litany of failures, several of its own making, and it'll soon have harder calls to make, like whether to recognise the new government.
See if there can be a peaceful settlement, a peaceful transfer of power.
A process made tougher still by the Taliban's early actions, releasing thousands of hardcore violent extremists from prisons.
What we're watching right now in Afghanistan is what happens when America withdraws from the world. So everybody who has been saying America needs to withdraw, America needs to retreat, we are getting a devastating, catastrophic, real-time lesson in what that means.
The distrust, disillusion and despair at decisions made cuts deep.
We cannot do anything. We cannot do anything.
Especially through America's Afghan community. Many ended up here fleeing the Taliban.
I think that you can't trust a terrorist group, and you are fooling yourself if you think that you can.
They came 20 years back to help us get out of this situation, and now we somehow are going back to the same situation.
America will bear responsibility for what happens next. First, by picking up some of the pieces of any humanitarian crisis. Then comes the reckoning on how its war came to such a rapid and disastrous end, and why no one seems to have seen it coming.
The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
The call to account has barely begun. Greg Jennett, ABC News, Washington.
Well, it's caused Melbourne's restrictions to be wound tighter. The Delta strain has claimed more lives in New South Wales. A further 478 cases have been discovered there and 8 more people have died. Ashley Raper reports.
Precious cargo from Poland has arrived. Extra Pfizer is now headed to help Sydney's west and southwest as the state's crisis deepens.
Our community transmission numbers are disturbingly high. We had 478 cases of community transmission.
Of the cases, less than a third can be linked. 61 were infectious in the community, but it's unknown whether a further 290 cases were isolating. 4 prisoners have tested positive at Silverwater Jail. There has also been an outbreak at St George Hospital with 3 patients on the oncology ward and 2 staff members being infected. And the virus is continuing to spread within Nepean Hospital. There are now 30 cases from separate outbreaks in the mental health facility and across other wards.
I just want to confirm that Nepean Hospital, including emergency department, remains open and all precautions have been put in place.
The state has recorded its highest number of COVID deaths in a single day. 15-year-old Osama Sabah had the virus but succumbed to pneumococcal meningitis. He died at Sydney Children's Hospital. A man in his 40s with underlying health issues died at Liverpool Hospital, along with a man in his 70s who is now the 8th death from the outbreak within the hospital. Another resident from an aged care facility in Summer Hill has died in RPA Hospital. 3 men in their 80s have also died, and a woman in her 70s.
The death of anyone is tragic, and it stresses the gravity of the situation.
And as the situation escalates, Dr Chand has this sobering outlook.
I do not see vaccination as a silver bullet.
The Premier too concedes that even having 80% of the adult population vaccinated won't solve the current problem.
If you have 500 cases a day at 80%, that is still dangerous just to say let it rip. You can't let it rip.
So now the message is the state can't vaccinate its way out of this. Vaccination rates going up has to coincide with cases coming down. But even then, New South Wales will be a long way from returning to normal.
So long as Delta has presence in the world, even if we had 0 cases and we were at 80% double dose, you would still have to respect some rules.
The rules, it seems, are the only things we can count on. Ashley Raper, ABC News, Sydney.
The ACT's lockdown has been extended by another fortnight too after its current outbreak grew by 19 cases in the past 24 hours. Like Melbourne, the ACT's stay-at-home orders will now run until at least the 2nd of September. And the Northern Territory government has announced a snap 72-hour lockdown after a COVID case was detected in the community there. NT Chief Minister Michael Gunner says it's not clear how the man in his 30s became infected with the virus.
Critically, we do not know the source of his infection. We do not know if he caught it in hotel quarantine during his time at the Canberra airport or at any other time during his transit.
The lockdown applies to Greater Darwin and the Katherine region. Almost 500,000 Australians are accessing the National Disability Insurance Scheme, but the number who come from diverse cultural and language backgrounds remains stubbornly low at less than 10%. Sarah Tomevska reports.
6-year-old Teek Mao has come along in leaps and bounds since accessing occupational therapy under the NDIS. He was diagnosed with non-verbal autism 4 years ago. It took more than a year to get access to the scheme, and his application was rejected twice. But for his mum, going to the doctor was the hardest step.
Some people say, why don't I get a carer for him and let the carer look after him? Or why don't I give him to the government for the government to look after him? I'm like, why though? He's my child, why should I do that?
Support agencies say stigma is an issue in many migrant communities.
Having more workers get trained to service clients in these communities with the NDIS would help.
Almost half of all Australians were born overseas or have a parent who was. By now, it was expected that 20% of NDIS participants would be culturally or linguistically diverse. But the actual figure is less than half that, and it's growing slowly. The federal government admits more work needs to be done to change that and plans to unveil a new strategy next year.
There are definitely people who should have an NDIS plan who don't.
Myanmar refugee Kam Lian Mung says he very nearly missed out. Arriving in Australia in 2018 after suffering a stroke, he was housebound for 2 years until a language interpreter helped him navigate the system.
Because I didn't know anything about the NDIS at the time and I didn't speak the language.
Interpreters should be engaged at every stage.
Kam says accessing culturally appropriate care has changed his life. Sarah Temevska, ABC News, Adelaide.
Malaysia's Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin has resigned, conceding he's lost majority support of the parliament. The Prime Minister was seen entering the National Palace to tender his resignation to the King after months of infighting in his coalition. It's not immediately clear who could form the next government or whether elections could be held during the pandemic. The resignation could hamper Malaysia's efforts to curb a resurgence in COVID cases and deaths, which are among the highest in Southeast Asia. The death toll from a devastating earthquake in Haiti has soared to almost 1,300. Rescue teams are finding more bodies as they desperately search for survivors in the rubble. The 7.2 magnitude quake hit the Caribbean nation on Saturday, flattening buildings in several cities. Hospitals are overwhelmed in the southwestern city of Lecce, The US Coast Guard has joined rescue efforts while Mexico and Colombia are sending emergency aid packages. Haiti has spent the past decade trying to rebuild its infrastructure after an earthquake in 2010, which killed more than 200,000 people. Back home now, and the veteran television and radio personality Ernie Sigley has died. Affectionately known as the Little Aussie Battler, Sigley was a mainstay of Australian variety shows for decades. The entertainer won 21 Logie Awards throughout his career, including a Gold Logie in 1975. He was also a successful recording artist, releasing several #1 singles.
Hey, hey, Paula, I want to marry you.
His longtime on-air partner Denise Drysdale has paid tribute to him, calling Sigley one of a kind and someone who could always make her laugh. Ernie Sigley had been suffering from Alzheimer's disease. He was 82. Well, it might be hard to believe, especially today, but there has been an upside to this pandemic. Pet adoption rates have skyrocketed, and with commercial flights limited due to state lockdowns, demand for a special kind of service is booming.
A safe arrival for a special group of passengers. These pets usually travel with the cargo, but not on this flight.
We don't treat them like cargo. They're in the cabin of the aircraft with us, and they've got someone travelling with them who is an experienced animal person who can attend to them if they need anything. There you go, sweetheart.
Dogs, cats, and sometimes even goats make the journey across Bass Strait to be greeted by their owners.
Got kisses? We have got kisses.
We're so exciting to see our new puppy and all the other puppies that are going to their new homes. We can't wait to get to know her better.
Fiona Millhouse set up Pawmobile, a weekly pet air service between Victoria and Tasmania, after seeing the challenges faced by pet owners during the pandemic.
I was doing road transport last year, a lot of road transport when COVID was really bad because people couldn't transport. There was no way for people to transport their animals. So few commercial jets flying, so there were no options really for flying, very few.
It's something Cattery owner Doris Rosenkrantz knows all about.
During COVID, it was just so difficult. Some cats stayed with me for 2 or 3 months simply because they could not get flights to places like Perth, and Sydney, so they just had to stay because there was no other alternative.
But now her cats and senior rescue pup Paige can travel between Victoria and Tasmania in style.
Little Paige is, with us now. She's just such a delight.
9 pets, including Luna here, have arrived at Essendon Airport to meet their new owners. And Fiona Millhouse says demand for this service is only going to increase. She's hoping to roll this service out Australia-wide. And the pilots are happy with their new clientele.
The animals don't complain as much. The dogs don't make too much noise and they generally just go to sleep. for most of the flight, which is nice.
It's a happy reunion once all 4 feet are on the ground. Eden Hennanen, ABC News, Melbourne.
To Finance Now, here's Alan Kohler. Carlton great Eddie Betts has announced his retirement from AFL football. The 34-year-old took to Instagram to thank his fans, the Carlton and Adelaide football clubs and his family. This weekend's game against GWS will be his 350th and final game. A 3-time All-Australian, the skillful small forward has kicked 638 goals across his 16-year career. Tennis great Roger Federer has an uncertain future after pulling out of the upcoming US Open with a knee injury. The 40-year-old will have a 3rd surgery on his troublesome right knee. The winner of 20 Grand Slam titles aggravated the injury at Wimbledon and didn't play at the Olympics.
I want to give myself a glimmer of hope also to return to the tour in some shape or form. I am realistic, don't get me wrong. I know how difficult it is at this age.
The Swiss star says he's likely to be out of the game for months. Australian Adam Scott has missed a putt that would have secured him victory and $1.5 million in prize money at the US Tour event in North Carolina. Scott's miss was on the first hole of a playoff involving 5 other players. American Kevin Kisner birdied the next hole to take the victory, which was his 4th on the tour. Now with the weather, here's Paul Higgins.
And Tam, after a warmish weekend, it was a bit brisk out there today, but temperatures will slowly rise again this week. Just below freezing in the Alps overnight, Albury-Wodonga was coldest out in the mountains with 2 degrees. Showers have been moving up over parts of the south today. You can see them there, and we've got these gales along the coast. Gusts at the Prom to 122 kilometres per hour. 8 millimetres of rain up in the Strazleckies. The Mallee was mildest, 19 at Mildura. 19 in Melbourne yesterday. But today only 14.4 at 3:05 p.m. Most places had less than 2 millimetres of rain, 4 at Berwick. Outside the back door now, it is 12 degrees. And while Brisbane, Sydney and Perth enjoyed winter warmth, Hobart struggled to just 10 after its wettest 24 hours in 5 months. That came with this cold front that's now in the Tasman. Plenty of cloud behind it over the nation's southeast in a southwesterly airstream from this high. That high will be north of us Wednesday. On Thursday, a north wind will develop ahead of a trough due on Friday. Tomorrow, a few showers in southern and mountain Victoria, over Tasmania and in the nation's southwest. But Perth and also Sydney will be mostly sunny. Blue skies in Brisbane, overcast in Hobart. The chance of a shower for Adelaide. Back home, a shower or 2 or drizzle tomorrow in southern and mountain parts, especially about the ranges out to the east of Melbourne. Dry across the northern plains, patchy morning fog in the northwest. It's going to be a mostly cloudy day with a southwesterly breeze. Snow showers above 1,600 metres. On the bay, a west to southwest wind 10 to 20 knots. And if you were thinking of taking a dip, this is historically the bay's coldest week of the year. 12 degrees in there at the moment. Gales tomorrow on the East Gippsland coast and strong winds on the central and central Gippsland coasts. Well, checking the rain radar, and some showers are moving up, especially over our southeast. They'll continue tonight and tomorrow, easing in the afternoon. 9 to 13 degrees with a moderate south to southwest wind. Up to 3 millimetres of rain in the city and 6 in our south and southeast. Still cloudy on Wednesday, but no rain. Thursday up to 17 and partly cloudy. 17 Friday, but windy with showers in the afternoon and evening. On Saturday, showers in the morning, sunny breaks in between, 17. Sunday, the chance of a late shower and wet next Monday, Tam.
Thanks, Paul. That's it for this evening's bulletin. Laura Tingle's up next with 7:30.